Hi, my name is Matt Hutchins, and I am an architect. I also serve on the Seattle Planning Commission, and in my practice, I'm deeply involved with affordable housing, infill housing, and how to get zoning to produce both those things. So I wanted to give a little rundown on what's happening with the One Seattle Comprehensive Plan and why you might support it, especially with regards to building more affordable housing. So first off, it's really important to recognize that Seattle is growing, and that's a good thing. We are lucky to have the development that is coming our way. We have demand for housing because people want to move here, and that we have lots of jobs for them to do. Plus, we have just a beautiful region. So we're blessed, but there's a lot of concern about how we're going to grow. And I wanted to frame this as an opportunity to really build a city that we want to be living in, and use this growth as a means to make Seattle much better for everyone. So let's get into it. What is the comprehensive plan? Well, comprehensive plan is a 20-year growth strategy. It's kind of a high-level vision for where things like jobs and housing and the infrastructure needs, all those things, how are they all going to fit together? So the target for this plan is 80,000 new homes and 150,000 new jobs. That puts us over a million people in Seattle. One of the components of this particular plan is that we have to include middle housing, which is duplexes and cottage courts, multiplexes, townhouses, as part of our formerly single-family zones, so-called neighborhood residential, or in the new plan, urban neighborhood. They keep switching the designations, but same territory in the city. Now, the growth strategy doesn't happen on its own. It's also aligned with other components in the comprehensive plan about transportation, utilities, climate and the environment, capital facilities, open space, etc. So it's not that these decisions about housing are not happening in a vacuum. They're really trying to think about growth holistically. Where we are now, you can see the comprehensive plan. It's meant to sort of we get growth targets from the state and from the region. Then we have to figure out how to implement those growth targets. We put together a future land use map. We put together policies that are going to support that, and that's kind of what the comprehensive plan is. It isn't implementation plan. It isn't projects. It's not. Those are the Seattle Transportation Plan. Those are housing levies. Those are things that then deliver on the goals that are outlined in the comprehensive plan. And eventually, down the road, you get to actual projects. Those are affordable housing projects. Those are new bike lanes. Those are all the things that we hope to see when we write the comprehensive plan. Within this generation of the comprehensive plan, there are two elements that are changing the most. Let's see, first of all, regional centers, urban centers, manufacturing and industrial areas, those parts of the city are not really being changed by this comprehensive plan. It's status quo for those areas where we've traditionally had a lot of growth. Downtown, South End, around light rail, those are not really changing. But what we do have is changes to urban neighborhoods and changes of these new nodes called neighborhood centers. So we'll go through each one of these, but first I want to talk about affordable housing. When we say affordable housing, it often means different things to different people. When I think about affordable housing, one, I think of deeply subsidized, or I should say subsidized, but much more deeply affordable, lower income housing that tends to be in larger buildings built by nonprofits, and this can serve 0 to 80% of the area median income folks that really need help to be able to afford housing in Seattle. The other side of that is what the market produces or has produced in the past, which is little a affordable housing, which is just less expensive housing. And that's by nature of its, size, age, type. So, townhouses, less expensive than single family houses, apartments, less expensive than single family houses, backyard cottages, all these things. And also old apartments, old houses. These all are less expensive than anything generally that is, that is built new. So two kinds of affordable housing are capital A, subsidized housing, and then little a, just less expensive housing. Not deeply affordable for everybody, but less expensive. So where do those things happen? One is neighborhood centers. Now, this is this network of walkable neighborhoods. This is historically little areas where we've had commercial development, stores, cafes, those sorts of things that kind of pre-existed zoning altogether. They just grew up organically, and then kind of we couldn't expand them because zoning kind of created a broad blanket of just single family zoning. So this brings back a lot of more opportunity for small retail, for neighborhood offices, for mixed use, for cafes, restaurants, all these things, plus lots of affordable housing because affordable housing requires kind of a higher level of density in order, or I should say a bigger building in order to work. So back in 1994, even before the urban village strategy, we had planned out, 24 of these neighborhood anchors, quote unquote. Again, the nomenclature changes over time, but you can see this pretty closely maps to the 30 neighborhood centers that are proposed today. As I said, these neighborhood centers, because they allow for 4- and 5-story buildings, you can get the sort of building that a nonprofit affordable housing developer will build that can support the attached, the sort of spectrum of services that deeply affordable or low income housing generally requires. And you could do it kind of at a scale where now it is distributed. Affordable housing isn't just all concentrated in one part of the city. It can be in all these nodes. So it's a bigger building, but this is what the scale that is required in order to build deeply affordable housing. Now, the rest of the city, of these areas in yellow, this is where small A affordable housing is going to happen. This is where less expensive than single-family detached houses are going to occur. Those are the backyard cottages. These are townhouses. And it's not to say, again, that these are the least expensive, that these are subsidized. These are just what the market could provide. Lots of housing options. Now, currently, we're all familiar with the explosion of backyard cottages and ADUs. This is what we can build today. 3 units on a single family lot, 5,000 square feet. This is roughly the scale. Now, these went on the market. You can see that they're not cheap. This isn't about that they're cheap. The difference is that you can see the larger house is over $1 million. But the 2 other units that were allowed now today that weren't allowed 10 years ago, these are $400,000 less. And if you're designing a program where you're gonna reduce the cost of a house by $400,000, use zero public money to do it, then middle housing is definitely less expensive, is a great way to go. Okay, a little bit about all the types that will be able to build. We start on the left with single-family houses and ADUs. That's about the bulk that we can currently build. Under the new legislation, we'll be able to build more units, a little bit more square footage. So that'll break into like 2 duplexes, some townhouses, 4 units, 6 units. But what's really interesting is being able to now bring back stacked flats. So there are incentives for stacked flats in this legislation that will allow for much more, 2-bedroom apartments, things that we used to build in all across Seattle, but sort of withered on the vine when we were only building single-family houses. So we'll be able to build small multiplexes and affordable housing in neighborhoods on certain sites. On the right here, you can see a 6-unit apartment building that I'm developing in Spokane, where this is allowed. You can see it will fit exactly on a 5,000 square foot lot, provided it's close to transit, and it follows all the code and provides a backyard and amenity space that's adequate to grow trees in. And this is little A affordable housing. All these units are less expensive than a single family house. In fact, several of these units are going to be workforce housing, meaning their rent is capped at 115% of AMI. Now, the thing I hear a lot is that, we need more affordable housing. Where does it go? And, first off, neighborhood centers. That's where we're going to get more affordable housing. We already are getting affordable housing in the urban centers, regional centers, but how do we expand that? How do we deal with the increased demand? Neighborhood centers are the way to go, where we get buildings that are big enough to allow for affordable housing developers to build. That scale is really important. A lot of people say those buildings are too big. They don't fit in. I don't want to see this kind of change. So really, come back to what sort of workforce housing, up to 120% of the area median income that we can build. And that comes from the urban neighborhoods, the middle housing, townhouses, starter houses. Those are DADUs, ADUs, condos, flats, all those things. Those can all integrate into existing neighborhoods, and they can do that at a small scale if we can build enough of them. So I also then hear, hey, those aren't really, 120% AMI. That's not really deeply affordable. So then we go back in the spin cycle where neighborhood centers are where those should occur. But really, if you care about affordable housing in this plan, you need to support both of these types and create places within the zoning that these things can occur naturally. So the other thing I wanted to talk about briefly is just the development capacity versus the actual target. This term, or this number of 330,000 new units, has been thrown around. That seems really, really high, but that's the development capacity. And that's if we developed every single parcel to its highest use, and that's not going to happen. So even though there's 330,000 potential new units, that doesn't mean that we're going to get anywhere near that. But the reality is we'll get some smaller amount. So this is by different zone. You can see development capacity versus the actual sort of projected number of units. Now, how do you plug in? How do you advocate for affordable housing? There's a lot of moving parts. So hopefully this will help. So these are all the upcoming sort of benchmarks. And what do these mean? Well, it breaks into kind of like 3 groups. There's the growth strategy, the comprehensive plan, which is this top level. That is what council is talking about right now. There's a final EIS to be resolved. This is the sort of big goals and the future land use map. The next step there is the phase 1 legislation, which is what we need to do to comply with HB 1110. It has a deadline. If we don't meet that deadline, then the state's model code supersedes Seattle's code. And City Council doesn't want that to happen. So therefore, whatever else happens, they're going to be voting on some version of an HB 11 compliant neighborhood or urban neighborhood zoning rewrite that's going to affect all 75% of the city. That has happened by June. The third component then is this finalization of the zoning maps for neighborhood centers, which I mentioned before, and new housing along corridors. And that would happen in the fall, but basically, from after they clear their decks with the growth strategy and the comprehensive plan, then they'll pivot to this. You'll notice that the plan changes for regional centers, urban centers. Those aren't in this timeline at all. They potentially could change, add more stories to urban centers. Those changes could happen next year. So lots of moving parts. I recommend that you let your council member know that you support affordable housing, and you can do that by supporting middle housing, by supporting neighborhood centers, and get involved and let them know that you really care about the future of the city. Thanks a lot.